Right, so the news. There's a lot of news, of course. Toyota is pushing hydrogen a lot. The CEO of Toyota does not believe in electric cars. He thinks hydrogen cars are the future. However, in America anyway, hydrogen cars are a disaster because there's not enough people driving them, so the hydrogen fuel stations are shutting down. So the drivers are, of course, very upset. You basically can't, it's very difficult to find any place to get the hydrogen, so this car is kind of useless. And so, I think in America it looks like hydrogen is just not going to take off, perhaps for no good reason. I don't know if it's actually better than electricity, but electricity seems to be the standard, so I don't think there's any going to be a motivation to build enough hydrogen-fueled power plants in America unless there was some really good reason why that car was cheaper or better than an electric car, and I haven't seen that. Well, it might be an issue of range, yeah. So the FTC, I was very surprised to see this and very glad to see it. Lina Khan, the head of the Federal Trade Commission, my alma mater, has now banned non-compete agreements. Now, this is exactly what the right wing wants to end, the administrative state. So you can't pass rules like that. They want to pretend everything will go through Congress because nothing would ever go through Congress, and then there just wouldn't be any laws, and that's what they want. But anyway, at the moment, the Federal Trade Commission does have the power to pass laws, and banning non-compete agreements would be great. They're not legal in California, and this is one of the reasons why Silicon Valley is so extremely productive. So if you work at a company like Google and you don't like it, you can leave and make your own startup building something similar and compete with them. And this happens all the time. But in other states, it can't happen. If you work, I listened to a sports journalist, and he had a non-compete agreement, so he couldn't do anything in that, any kind of broadcast for like 5 years. I think the same thing happened to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was fired by Fox News, and I think he's not allowed to have any kind of broadcast show, so he has a streaming show on Twitter, which might even that violate his non-compete agreement. So these things keep people trapped in the job and hold back innovation, so I'd be glad to see him gone. Although I imagine there'll be serious lawsuits about this because the big companies like to keep their people trapped. So Ukraine is using long-range bomber balloons. Now this sounds ridiculous to me, but they've made it out of this. They use a pop bottle for ballast. They have a controller, a tracker, and then they just stick like a munition down here, which is an artillery shell. And so apparently they can somehow control something from here to try to hit the target. The part I don't understand is how do you actually get to the target? Seems like you'd be at the mercy of the wind, and you couldn't really fly with any accuracy towards a target. And the only thing controlling that would make any sense is at least if you can let air out of the balloon in a controlled way. Anyway, they've been making these things. They got a couple that fell down. I'm dubious about how effective they are, but I can't beat the price, I suppose. It looks like it would cost almost nothing to make those. Drones cost about $1,000. I remember when Iran attacked Israel about a week ago, one report I heard said that they only had to pay $1,000 for each drone, but Israel had to pay like $1 million for each missile to take out the drone. So even though they don't get... What's that?
It's more than that. The cheapest one is like from China, the one that...
the missiles? Oh, the drone.
The drone. The expensive one is like 20K to 50K.
Yeah, but they apparently said they were using $1,000 drones from Iran.
No, $1,000 is cheaper from China.
Okay.
It's not
yeah, okay. Well, anyway, it's...
But the problem is the issue and all the missiles shoot out from the U.S. and everybody.
Yeah.
It's costing like $1.5 billion.
That's what I thought, yeah. So shooting it down with missiles is arguably very expensive.
Yeah. It's legalized now.
So even an attack that doesn't hit the target does cost the enemy quite a lot. Yeah. So this is something that keeps coming around in America, a desire to require a license to be a cybersecurity professional. It has never made it anywhere in America. There's a time when Texas passed a law like this, but it turned out that it meant that only police could be any kind of computer technician, and that wasn't what they wanted. But apparently Malaysia, Singapore, and Ghana have passed laws that require cybersecurity firms and individuals to get licenses to do business. But it's not quite clear what that license entails. In America, the closest thing we have is like the CISSP, which I will be teaching next semester. That's a common certification many jobs require. But it's not required by the government.
Just turn to the dark side, that's all.
What's that?
People just go to the dark web to do business, that's all.
Well, that's true. I mean, you certainly could go to unlicensed people if you wanted to save money. It's not quite clear what these people have to do in those countries. This comes up every now and then, the idea that you have to license security professionals. Haven't heard of it in the last few years, though.
Changing too fast. Nobody can do.
Well, we have a CISSP, which is pretty close to the same thing. But anyway, so...
Changing too fast
Oh, I'm not so sure. I think there's a lot of certifications in security that matter, even though things change fast. Anyway, so Microsoft made this thing called Wizard LM, but they forgot to run it through any safety testing, and they released it, and then they realized it was bad, so they took it back, but people had already copied it. And so unauthorized copies are going up now, so now it's everywhere. Multiple copies on many websites, so they sort of lost control of it. Of course, it's not proven that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that it didn't go through the testing. So maybe it's okay, but certainly the pirate copies are all over the place now. So optogenetics is pretty amazing. People who suffer from macular degeneration. I was very interested in this because it's a common thing that happens to old people where you go blind, effectively, in old age, typically. And the fact is you still have nerve cells in the back of your eye. So what they do is they inject genetic material that causes your nerve cells to add chemicals that make them sensitive to light, and then they implant like a screen in the back of your eye with diodes that light up, and then they put a camera in the front, and they can then give you some vision. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's a lot better than no vision at all. That sounds pretty amazing. One thing, when I posted this on Mastodon, somebody pointed out something that's absolutely true. These artificial technological implants are a huge problem because typically what happens is people get the implant and then a couple of years later the company goes broke or gets sold and they quit supporting it, and you're left with something that breaks and you can't get it fixed. The rapid pace of technological innovation doesn't get along with people needing an implant to work for a lifetime. So often the people that get them are sorry later. But anyway, sounds pretty good in that regard, at least as far as the technology. And so I tried writing code with large language models. I tried and wasn't very impressed. This guy tested a bunch of them and found that ChatGPT is by far the best at writing code. But all the models he's using here are general purpose large language models, and I'm not much in favor of these things. These large language models were trained on basically all the data on the internet, so they can do everything. They can write poems and songs and fiction and science and everything, and I always thought that's not the way to do it, and there are alternative models out there. For example, one was just brought out that Microsoft, I think somebody brought up a really small model, and they trained it on children's books, the way humans learn. Humans don't learn by just getting all the information in the world. They learn on simplified examples of how to learn English. And when you train your model that way, you can have a much smaller model that learns much faster and much cheaper. So that makes some sense. And here's another thing I really like is the NVIDIA's model. NVIDIA has a model just for writing code. It doesn't know English or anything else. It just knows how to write code. One version knows like 300 languages, and a smaller version knows like the top 17 languages. And so this would be a way to make a smaller model that's faster and cheaper to run and probably more accurate. And they claim that their small model is very accurate on a test. StarCoder 2 it is. So they claim it's more accurate than other models. It sounds logical to me, rather than trying to have your LLM learn everything in the world, learn one specialized skill.
Somebody put out a research paper on to test out the Copilot.
Yeah.
They were saying that only, if the vulnerability is in the model, then it shows up on output. So the code is full of vulnerabilities.
Yes. Yes, I've seen that. The code.
Only like 1/4 of the code is correct the vulnerability. One third is just repeat whatever is there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, basically the same thing's true of Stack Exchange. Copilot has learned by just looking at all the code on GitHub. So all you're going to get is copies of that code. So you're only going to get up to like the average coder. So a lot of the code is going to have vulnerabilities. Absolutely. If you could train it on a more carefully selected base of good code, it would learn better, and that would probably be a good thing to do, but that hasn't been done yet.
That means all the human programmers are already good at solving all the vulnerabilities already. Yeah, well, that's why I think that would be an enhancement, would be to have like carefully selected good code and train it only on that so it makes better code. All right, anyway, I think that's enough for the news.